You know, in the high-stakes world of international security, there's this constant global negotiation going on over technologies that could, quite literally, end everything. So today, we're going to dive deep into that complex world of arms control. And really, it all boils down to this one central question, the one that keeps diplomats and generals up at night. In a world packed with powerful, competing nations, how on earth do we manage the most destructive weapons ever created by humankind? To really get why this is so critical, we first have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the power we're actually dealing with here. You've probably heard the term WMDs thrown around a lot, right? Well, it stands for Weapons of Mass Destruction, and the definition is just chilling. We're not talking about normal weapons. Their power is measured on a macro scale. So think city level, maybe even civilization level destruction from just a single event. See, the physics of how a bomb works is one thing, but the politics? Trying to prevent these things from ever being used among dozens of competing, sometimes hostile nations? That is the real core challenge of global security. So, faced with this truly unimaginable power, the world had to come up with a strategy to manage it. And that brings us to the big idea, arms control. Let's break down what that actually means. Now, this is a really important point. Arms control isn't always about getting rid of all the weapons. It's more about setting the rules of the game. It's a whole series of international agreements that limit everything from the type of weapons you can build, to where you can put them, to how many you can have. And this is where people can get a little confused. See, arms control is about management and creating stability. Disarmament, on the other hand, is what's called the zero option, the total, complete elimination of a type of weapon. They're related for sure, but they are two very different goals. Okay, so if we're managing weapons instead of just getting rid of them, what's the logic? Well, it all comes down to one simple and frankly brutal word, deterrence. The core idea is basically this. If you attack me, my response is going to be so devastating that it won't be worth it for you, period. And when you take that logic to its extreme, you get maybe the most famous and terrifying acronym ever, MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. This was the razor's edge the world lived on during the Cold War. It means both sides are armed to the teeth, so much so that even if one side attacks first, the other can still launch a retaliatory strike that guarantees total annihilation for everybody. It's a weird, chillingly precarious kind of stability. So how do you turn these huge, abstract concepts like deterrence and MAD into actual policy? You do it through a complex, painstakingly negotiated international rulebook. A really great way to think about this is like global traffic laws. I mean, we have rules for the road to prevent accidents, right? Well, arms control treaties are the traffic laws for the world's most dangerous technologies, all designed to prevent a catastrophic collision. And these rules were not written overnight. This has been a constant, ongoing process. It started way back in '63 with banning nuclear tests in the atmosphere. Then, in '68, a huge step forward with the non-proliferation treaty to stop the spread of nukes. The '70s gave us treaties that put a cap on missile numbers. And as recently as 2010, the New START treaty kept reducing those arsenals. Each one builds on the last. But how do you actually know the other side is following the rules? It all comes down to verification. These treaties are absolutely not based on trust. They rely on things like on-site inspections and what they call national technical means, which is really just a polite way of saying spy satellites, to make sure everyone is doing what they promised. Now, when we talk about arms control, it's so easy to just picture nuclear missiles, but the effort to limit the horrors of war goes much, much further than that. The scope of arms control is actually vast. You've got major international conventions that ban biological and chemical weapons, you have treaties trying to eliminate the scourge of landmines and cluster munitions, and there are even agreements to limit conventional forces, tanks and aircraft, in specific regions. And you have to remember, every single one of these agreements represents years, sometimes decades, of incredibly difficult, painstaking diplomacy. It is a monumental human effort just to put some guardrails on conflict. Which brings us to a final, really crucial point. Arms control isn't just a history lesson. It's a living, breathing process that has to constantly adapt to a world that never stops changing. I mean, the world never stands still, does it? New weapons get invented, new international tensions emerge, and old treaties can start to look obsolete. This means the work of managing global threats is, well, it's never finished. For decades, we've been writing the rulebook for conflicts on land, at sea, and in the air. But what happens when the battlefield moves into outer space and cyberspace? What does a treaty for anti-satellite weapons even look like? Or for cyber warfare? That is the enormous question for the next generation of arms controllers.